On this week's show, I'm joined by Jorrit de Haan, who is General Counsel at Mollie. Now, if you don't know, Mollie is one of Europe's fastest growing fintech companies. It started out in payments but has moved into other spaces within the financial services market. Jorrit oversees a team of 7 lawyers, and he joined the business in 2021, stepping into his first general counsel role, where he's grown that legal function, set it up from scratch. We cover loads of ground in this episode and what it's like, a real insight into what it's like in going in, boots on the ground as the first general counsel, where a business has taken that step to having a legal play a strategic role in its growth. We discuss things like why it's so important to take your time to get the right hire and trusting your gut instinct on making those hires. And Jorrit's built up over the years of being in that hiring position, from good and bad experiences, that gut feel and knowing to trust it. We also discuss how Jorrit found himself in that position at Mollie, and it was great to hear how his network really opened the door for that position. His old boss being on the board at Mollie and stepping in and encouraging him to put himself into that process, and look how things have worked out. So underlying the importance of networking and harnessing your network. So loads of interesting stuff for people and aspiring general counsel. So we'll jump right in. Hi, Jorrit. Thanks for joining me today.
Yes, happy to be here.
Thank you for coming. We spoke about recording this when we grabbed a coffee in my earlier days in Amsterdam. So thanks for taking the time. I first I reached out because I had seen you on a Dutch podcast and career focused podcast, and wasn't quite my Dutch ear isn't quite tuned in to get the nuggets out of that, so I was keen to give an English translation to share. So thank you for doing that.
Very excited to be here. Last year I did my first podcast, and it was in Dutch. So that was it was a really nice experience. So I'm happy to now also do it in English. Nice,
good. So I've given an introduction as best I can, but it would be great if you could give us an overview of your role at the moment and where you are.
Yeah, sure. I'm now the General Counsel and Corporate Secretary at Mollie. Mollie is a fintech based in Amsterdam, or headquartered in Amsterdam and based throughout Europe. Started as a payment service provider and is now venturing into more of a full suite financial services company. Okay. It's already 20 years old, but it still very much has that new challenger vibe. Doing things quick but good, and trying to always challenge the status quo. Yeah, it's very different from where I worked before, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I bet. That's crazy. 20 years old. So
we celebrated last summer with a big party.
Right, nice. Where was that?
It was, I unfortunately couldn't join because I was on holiday, which was also nice. But it was somewhere in the, I don't know how to say it in English, the Noordoostpolder. Okay. But it's part of the reclaimed land between a little bit above Amsterdam.
Nice. Okay, cool. And has it's always been Mollie? It's always been, that's not a sort of 20 post its 20-year creation as a name, the brand.
Now you're gonna get a lawyer answer, but to the best of my knowledge, yes. Yeah. But I joined a little over 3.5 years ago, and also a long time before that, it was already called Mollie. Yeah. I'm not sure if it was called Mollie from the beginning, but I think so.
Nice. Yeah. And what, so 20 years, what were you inheriting then going in 3.5 years ago? What was the legal function that you took on?
There was, when I joined Mollie, June 21, there were a few good legal people working there. Mm-hmm. So they were sound lawyers, they were doing their job, but to me, that didn't feel like a legal function. So It was individual legal people that were good at their jobs, doing the right things, but there wasn't somebody to take a little bit more of a high overview on what should we be doing, instead of are we doing what we're doing right?
Right.
So I tried to translate it from being reactive to just fixing the problems that are presented to more, for lack of a better word, to be more strategic, to think about what should we be doing as a legal function and where do we have the most added value.
Yeah. Okay. So they hadn't had a general counsel up to that point, right? No. Perfect. So nice to get into that, and a bit of a clean slate. It must have felt like. Cool. All right. Well, keen to hear more about that. But we'll start off with lesson one. If you could share that with me, please.
Well, lesson one ties into what we just discussed. I think my first lesson is that you cannot spend too much time on hiring.
Okay.
And also that I think you should only hire people that you trust.
Right.
So the way it's not. This is a lesson I learned from my previous manager, Celie, and she always. When you're busy, but you have budget to hire somebody, it's very easy to just focus on your day-to-day tasks and to think, oh, I'm gonna get to filling that job description. I'm gonna get to posting it online. But I think it should be the other way around. Do it immediately, because in the long run, it only saves you time. So that's the first type of you cannot spend too much time on hiring. And the second thing about what I mean with that is that I think you really have to push until you find the right person. So when I joined Mollie, there was only a few people. We are now together in total with 7. I hired each and every one of them. Yeah. I also made mistakes in the past, and reflecting on that, when I made somebody that actually wasn't really a fit in the team, when I hired that person, I already I wasn't convinced. So I wanted to hire somebody. So at some point, I chose the best from the people that were available at that time. But I wasn't convinced, and I regretted it in hindsight. And it cost you ultimately more time to manage that situation. Right. So I made that mistake once, and then I resolved with myself, I'm never going to do that again. Learn a lesson, and just keep looking until you have found the person that is the right fit for the company, for the team, and obviously the right skill set. Yeah. But I would prioritize the first 2.
Yeah, makes sense. And you said you learned that, or someone gave you that advice from a previous role. Where was that? What position were you in at that point in time?
That's Celie. She was the general counsel at Exact, where I worked before, and then she at some point went to Mollie, and she asked me to join. Yeah, and she became a board member at Mollie, and I joined as heading the legal department. Okay, nice. So we worked with each other before, right? And I learned a lot from her.
Yeah, nice. It's good to have those. Yeah, good to have role models like that and pick their brains. And like from, I guess there's 2 parts of it, like candidate experience. Like I'm keen to talk about this, obviously, given our business, but like candidate experience, like the getting that role with Mollie, like was that a protracted process? Did it feel, was there a 2-way beauty pageant on like the process and them having the right fit and the business being the right fit for you? What was your experience there?
It more or less happened natural, I would say, given that I worked with Lee before. So I already had an intro into the company, and then I went through the full beauty pageant, as you would call it. So I met with everybody else that was a stakeholder for the role. I think it was just the perfect fit, also back then, because I came from a company that is similar and very different. I was ready for a next challenge, and I really wanted to manage a team and set up the function. And this was the perfect opportunity for me. And I liked that it has a completely different vibe than what I'm used to, what I was used to, I should say. And sometimes I still feel like a new starter, but after 3.5 years, I cannot really claim that anymore. But it's a completely different vibe, but it's very energizing. Yeah. It felt good right from the start.
Nice. Yeah, having that connection and the network in. I think there's so many people I talk to on this on the podcast that the right role is in someone within their network or within their network already. So having built that relationship is obviously super valuable. So then, like, I guess with now from the hiring side and implementing that in terms of getting the right person and the process being too long, how do you ensure that, like, you're not losing people because there's a protracted process or something that's longer drawn out if you're looking for the perfect fit?
I don't think I lose people because I can still decide quick. Because as soon as I found a person, then I also stop doubting it. So as soon as I found a person that I think is the right fit, then we can hire them within 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I don't spend time on comparing people. So maybe that's, now that I'm talking about it, maybe that's the lesson or part of it. I don't pick 4 people and then interview all 4 of them and then wait until I've spoken to all 4 to compare them. If there's somebody that I'm convinced is the right fit, then I will just choose that person. So then you also don't lose them.
Yeah, so gut feel plays into it. And it sounds like quick knows if they're not right and you move on and don't...
I also trust my gut quite a lot in hiring.
Yeah. What do you look for in that then? Is there, aside from the legal experience, and if it's particularly a niche area or something, then it's obviously you can spot it from where someone may have been and the experience they've had. What traits do you look for in people?
What I find most important is being able to trust a person. So I like kind people, people that are sociable, that are kind, that obviously know their stuff, but I like them to be trustworthy. And it sounds a little bit vague, but I was already thinking about it before on how to maybe specify that or quantify it, but that I don't like. I always tell my team, like, I don't need to know where you are. I don't need to know when you're working. I don't care. I trust you to do your job, and I trust you to work hard within reasonable hours. And so I trust you completely, and you will have that unconditionally until there's something gnawing at the back of my mind that maybe I cannot trust you, or maybe you're making a fool out of me, or maybe you're lying to me, and then it's gone.
Yeah, I'm in that camp as well. That you give trust. You don't. You don't build trust. You give in trust, and then you lose it rather than something that you gain and build up over time. I think it's a good starting point. And like you said, if there's any doubts, then question marks. And I think as long as if you communicate that at the outset, then there's no question. If you start questioning it, then people know to sort of rein themselves in and adjust, and the expectations are managed, perhaps.
If I start questioning it, I think it would almost already be too late.
Long, right?
Yeah. So, because losing somebody's trust, you have to do quite a lot for that, I would say.
Yeah.
And trust isn't on content. So I don't think I'm a person that is harsh on mistakes. If you make a mistake, then, well, you have to learn from it. But everybody makes mistakes. So I'm not harsh on that, but I'm harsh on people being cheeky, or people trying to bend the rules, and trying to always think about their own advantages and thinking about just themselves. People not being, I don't know if that's an English word, but collegial. We're a team.
Yeah.
So I also want the rest of the team to trust. I want everybody to trust everybody.
Yeah.
Also because you work in a high pressure environment, and there's a lot of pressure on legal teams sometimes, which is fine, but then you need a safe space, and you need a safe basis within your own team to be able to push back to other departments where that is sometimes necessary.
Yeah. Hard things for someone to get across in an interview, though, in terms of meeting or an interview process, like having those, like making those connections. How do you shape? Do you have a format in terms of your process involving stakeholders at Mollie to give you that as to how someone would operate in a real life scenario?
No, the only rule I think I have in my application process is that the whole team speaks to everybody. So I want everybody to say yes.
Yeah.
And that can be 10, 15, 20-minute chats. So it doesn't have to be one person. One time it escalated a little bit. So I wanted the candidate to speak to my whole team. But then also there were a lot of other stakeholders. Yeah. So at some point, I think this person had 6 or 7 interview rounds. Yeah. And they were all nice. So everybody was very enthusiastic. Yeah. And so I didn't realize at the time how tough that must have been for that person. So I apologized afterwards. And I explained, it's just a role that everybody's very interested in. So it's more that everybody's keen to get to know you and wants to make sure that you're the right person. And we didn't organize 6 rounds because there were any doubts. But I lost control of that process a little bit. And I try to normally be quicker. Yeah. But as a general rule, I would like everybody from my team to speak to everybody that joins.
Yeah, I think it's great from the candidate's perspective as well that they're seeing if there is warts and all, and they get a good rounded picture of what they're walking into, as much as the business is getting a rounded picture on them. So
and I want them to trust each other. I want them to work nice together. They're not children, but I want them to play nice together. They all have to get along, and I like a good team spirit. That's very important to me.
Cool. And in those 3 and a bit years of being at Mollie, what have been this being this is the first general counsel role that you've sort of stepped into, or the first build a team role. What is there anything in particular that you feel I didn't anticipate that coming into that role? Like, what's been the biggest learning curve and challenge in that GC role that people might not know about, that haven't been in or aspire to be in that position?
Yeah, there's a few things about that. When you're the GC, I find that sometimes I'm a little bit jealous of my team because I feel like they do more of the actual fun work.
Right.
And I do a lot of work that is either left over or goes wrong, or I'm not supposed to swear, I think, in this podcast. But
we can. We've had slips of the tongue before.
Yeah, I'll try not to. But more of fixing a lot of problems. So, and that is something I hadn't realized. I would expect the work, and a lot of work that I do is also very interesting. But also part of it is just fixing problems, fixing miscommunications. If projects get stuck, get them unstuck, getting the right people to talk to each other. Yeah. So it's a lot of problem fixing, which I never thought about how the content of my work would change stepping into this role. But a lot of small problem fixing, that's part of my week. Yeah. And I didn't realize that up front.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's also something you have to like.
Fixing other people's problems, I imagine, sometimes as well. And
and if for example, I like drafting contracts, I like negotiating contracts. I can spend half a day reviewing a contract, and I will be perfectly happy with that. And in my previous roles, I had much more time to do those kinds of things, and now I often don't.
Right.
And then I look at people from my team, and they're also busy, but they have a little bit more time. It's also their job to do these bigger contracts. And then sometimes a little jealous.
Yeah. Cool. And then just on the first, going into that, where there's been a legal, you've inherited something where there's been legal on the periphery and doing sort of business as usual. It sounds reactive work. How do you prepare the first 90 days? Like, this is how I'm going to go in. There needs to be a shift in how the business interacts with legal. Is there anything you did or took steps proactively to put a flag in the ground?
No. I did not prepare for that at all. So maybe that's also a good lesson. For lack of a better word, maybe I started quite naive in that role. And I thought, I'm just going to start and see how things are going now, and then I will think about how I can improve it.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a big plan ready when I started. It also helped a lot that Slee was there.
Yeah.
So she, I think, did have that plan already in mind. That's also why she asked me to join.
Yeah.
But we set that up in the beginning together. But I didn't think about it that much upfront.
Right. Yeah.
It's also, I never worked at a company like Mollie before, so I don't think it would have helped me if I came with a preset idea of this is how we're gonna fix it. Because I've seen, I did some interim work for a few years, so I've seen a lot of in-house legal departments, and I've learned from, I've seen what I think works in different environments, but going in there with open vision, I think helped me to really look at what is going well at Mollie and what can we improve. And that's very different from some of the other companies I've seen.
Yeah, I think that's a sound. Although, you're saying you didn't go in with a plan. It is a plan to get to know the business and what it needs, and reacting and making the changes. So we'll move on to lesson 2.
Yeah. So one of the other things I really learned throughout my career, I think I learned this quite recently actually, is that I think there's a lot of different type of legal jobs, and the fact that maybe you're not thriving in one of those jobs doesn't mean you can't thrive in another.
Right.
I started as a lawyer. I think I was fine, a fine lawyer. Then I started as an interim legal counsel. I think I was fine with that as well, at that. And recently I kind of feel like being a general counsel is the role that so far fit me best. And it's also the role that I'm most comfortable in.
Okay.
And which is weird to me because I think objectively it's more challenging than the roles I've had before. But I think my personality and the way I operate fits better with the role I currently have than any of the jobs I've had before. I like them all, but I feel this part comes most natural to me. So when you join a law firm, you always look around and you see other people thriving more. So there's people, I worked as a lawyer for 6 years, and then some of my peers were already, people already knew that they were on the partner trajectory and those kinds of things. And then you can sometimes feel a little bit, for lack of a better word, lost, like they're better at their job than I am. What will my future look like? Yeah. But in hindsight, I realized that it's a very different skill set you need for those kind of jobs. And the fact that maybe I don't thrive at those specific skills doesn't mean I can be successful anywhere else.
Yeah.
So maybe the lesson I learned is also be a little bit patient, try different things, and just find something that suits you.
And it doesn't have to feel natural all the time. Did you feel, you said that's something you've learned recently? Is that because do you just feel a marked difference in terms of your fulfillment in your role and the function that you're providing right now versus what you did? Or at the time, did you feel, oh, this isn't quite right, or this isn't quite clicking for me, or this isn't the role for me?
I think I realized this recently because I just turned 40, and that made me think about life, my career, those kinds of things. So I started reflecting on where I come from, and also for the people at home, I still have to work like almost 30 years. I'm at 1/3 of my career. Which I like working, so that doesn't stress me out at all. But I was thinking about, okay, I've now worked for 15 years. I work about 25, 30 more. How? And what kind of roles do I see myself doing the next 30 years? And it was during that reflection that I realized how happy I am in my current role and how well I think it fits with my personality and my skill set.
Where you're at now, I sort of reflect back because I was a lawyer previously and never felt, I'm not patient generally, but I never felt at home, or I felt other people around me that, as you use the word thriving, people are sort of, I don't know if they're just living their best life and make it look that way and better at putting on a face. But it's, I think there's the right thing. But I also think at the junior level that assume that it should feel right, like you've studied towards something, and if other people around you are hitting their groove, then it's hard when you don't maybe feel that you are. Is my experience. And you've done. Between being in a law firm and the interim work and the contract work, did that help shape? Like, I guess you get more experience of different roles for shorter periods of time. Has that helped shape, I know what right feels like for you?
Yeah, that helped me a lot. I was a lawyer for 6 years, and then I reflected and I decided I don't want to be a lawyer for the rest of my life. This is not, that's not going to make me happy. And then, so I started applying for in-house roles because I thought that would fit me perfectly. Yeah. And then I still remember those interviews. And the first question everybody asked me is, why do you want to leave the law firm? And I had a perfect answer to that because I knew exactly why I wanted to leave, what I didn't like about the job. And then the second question was always, why do you want this job? And there I would just mumble a bit and stare at them.
Right.
But I realized at some point, this is not going to work because I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah.
And then a good colleague of mine, she half a year or a year before, she moved to a firm that seconded legal people for interim legal counsels. And she loved it. And she said, this is also, I think, what you should be doing. And then we had one or two conversations. And then I thought, I know I want to leave. I don't know where I want to go. So doing 4 or 5 assignments with different companies will probably help me understand, whether or not it's actually something for me or whether I'm going to run back to the law firm and say I'm sorry and please take me back. Yeah. But so it helped me. I saw a lot of I did like 5 or 6 assignments for about 5 to 6 months. And then afterwards I just made a list. I made a list of everything I liked and everything I didn't like about certain assignments. And then since then, I've always just put every new job, it's been 2, next to that list.
Yeah.
And then, for example, what's on the list is that I don't like working in big legal teams.
Okay.
So I worked at 2 companies where the legal departments were like 50 plus people.
Okay.
And then I feel like I'm too specialized, which is also what I didn't like at the law firm. I like being a generalist. I like having overview. I like understanding how processes and departments tie into each other. And if you work at those bigger companies with big legal departments, then you can't have that.
Yeah.
Then you need to be a person, I think, that likes to be specialized in one topic. So that's a very simple thing I found out. So since then, I've always tried to work for medium-sized companies with small legal teams where you can still have that overview of the whole company.
Yeah. I think there's people that thrive in that environment of larger, but I get it, and I think the interim piece definitely helps. In the just for the benefit of international or common law listeners, like leaving law firm in the Netherlands, you give up, in probably most European countries, you give up your practicing certificate and then an in-house role. Like you're saying, leave the law, but you're leaving the bar almost. That you're giving up your practicing certificate to move.
Yeah, you have to request to be disbarred.
Yeah,
and that's because you're not insured anymore, so you're not allowed to practice as a lawyer without insurance. So there's a rule that you can be an in-house lawyer associated with the bar, but it comes with a lot of special requirements. Yeah. But most legal professionals in the Netherlands are just legal counsels and disbarred. But it's also very easy to be admitted to the bar again. Yeah. So you can just request that, and if you don't have any, I think, convictions or something like that, you will get admitted again, and then you have some educational requirements. Okay. But it's not. You don't have to do the 3-year internship again. So it also, the first time I explained it to a UK lawyer, he didn't really get it, but it doesn't have a lot of impact.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just giving up your practicing certificate,
Yeah.
and then probably some additional modules to train or retrain on the practical side. It isn't too dissimilar to the UK. You just don't go through the physical. You retain your practicing certificate, your privilege, and everything is probably.
No, I lost my privilege.
Yeah, that's a shame. And in taking that step from law firm into going into interim, did that feel risky? Did it feel?
It didn't feel risky when I decided it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
It made perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think within the law firm, it was by some people a little bit frowned upon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think everybody understood it as a next step in my career or something that would help me or something that would be good for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think, and that I got a little bit nervous about that because I was completely happy with what I decided.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden people were reacting a little bit funny.
Mm-hmm.
But I went ahead anyway, and I'm very happy I did.
Yeah.
But I don't think objectively everybody perceived it as a great career move.
Mm. But I guess it's through the glasses of if you want to be in my position, which is the best position as a partner or somewhere in a law firm, and this isn't the right thing to be doing. So they're not exactly. There's objectivity's out the window, isn't it? A little bit when they've got their experience and their reasons for doing it.
But it's also people you look up to.
Yeah,
so
true.
You want people that you look up to
approve.
To approve and think you're doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be a little bit unsettling.
Yeah. It's okay not to.
It's all good now.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. When you look back on it, and the 40 milestone, 40 years old. I'm coming up in a couple of months' time. Which I was called middle-aged for the first time today. Which
by somebody you know,
by someone I know. Yeah. Don't know. That well, but yeah, past comment on without me revealing my age actually, but it struck a chord which I've not been called middle aged before actually. I don't think it's not something I've heard. It stood out when the words came out. So yeah,
that hurts.
Yeah.
But
yeah, sound like you're in a good place for being 40 and happy with the direction of travel.
I noticed that turning 40 made me reflect and also think ahead, but I am not bothered by it. It's just so I kind of liked this moment of being a little bit more conscious of where am I and where am I heading. That's how I used turning 40, and I threw a party, but I didn't spend a day in bed or being unhappy about it.
Nice. Where was it? Was the party in Amsterdam? You live in the...
No, we live in The Hague.
The Hague,
so
yes.
It was a party in The Hague.
Okay, nice. Cool. Well, we'll jump on to lesson 3.
Yeah, that's Harlan's razor and the value of that.
Okay.
And Harlan's razor is actually, I'm going to admit it, it's a quote I saw on Instagram.
Okay.
Somebody used it, and it just kind of struck a chord with me. I like it very much. It says something along the likes of, never attribute anything to malice what you can attribute to incompetence.
Okay, right.
Which I love. I love that phrase, and it helps me a lot also in day-to-day working life. And I was also reflecting on that a little bit in preparation of this podcast. Why does it help me?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the reasons is that as a lawyer, you are always thinking about what is the worst case scenario?
Mm-hmm.
What is the other side going to do to screw us over, to stab a knife in our back? You have to think of every possible scenario. And you always have to assume the worst, basically. The other side is, and especially in litigation. I also did M&A, and there it's not so much the case. But I started in litigation, and there you account for every single possibility, every counter argument. You're very focused on everything that can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that sometimes I also apply that principle maybe a little bit in just working environment, where I think people are trying to put a knife in my back or screw me over or just when I see something objectively go wrong, I think maybe it's my personality or it's my legal training, but I don't always assume the best.
The best out of people, yeah.
Yes.
I'm definitely the same, yeah.
And so it helps me a lot to think about Harlan's razor and just maybe it's just incompetence instead of malice. And it's much nicer to help somebody that is struggling than to help somebody that's malicious.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I apply this 100%, but I try.
Yeah. It's a good one. So it's assuming that the person doesn't know what they don't. They perhaps don't know what they don't know, and they're going into that. And it's I get it. You're presuming. So how have you applied? How's it? I guess. Do you find yourself correcting yourself going into a conversation or a negotiation?
Yes, and I try to spend a little bit more time understanding why people do what they do. And also working in an international environment, you also learn that sometimes it's just language barriers. For example, in my experience, I hope nobody's offended, German people try to be a little bit more direct when they write in English.
Okay.
Where an email from a German colleague that says, I need this and this, is perfectly acceptable in a German working environment. I think Dutch and UK people would not write it like that, which is fine. So I think that's part of it, just understanding that people have a different angle in how they approach things. So it's, I would say 99% not ill-intended, but it's just a different of approach or different of understanding difference. I also correct myself when my first response was maybe a little bit too harsh. I will, when I find out more, I will correct my course.
Yeah. Hold your hands up. I've been too hasty, but I think the legal training definitely does play into that, right? Because there's nature and nurture, but you're always thinking back to criminal law, and there's always you're looking at intent and what is someone's intent, and as a result, malice, and perhaps not their incompetence that causes it. But I think, from I'm now in obviously a sales role. I think I don't know how much of it's shaped by personality or otherwise, or my legal background. But I often go into thinking, whether it's glass half full or glass half empty, I am covering over and thinking, right, what's their intention here? What are they going to try and stiff over me, or what am I going to miss out on? Which isn't. I don't know if it's. I think it helps in some cases, and others it can perhaps just lead to the wrong mindset going into things. But and there's definitely different approaches in our team, and people who are way more glass half full and thinking rosy of others. But it swings and roundabouts.
There's also stuff you can only attribute to malice. So I mean that will always stay. But if you have a choice. I think at least you're a happier person if you try to attribute it to incompetence. And then if you find out it's malice after all, then you correct that.
Good old Instagram. Sharing that one. And have you? Is it something in the team that you have instilled in the team, or got them to practice when they're dealing with stakeholders?
I think my team is better at this than I am.
Okay.
I try to also, maybe because of my role, but there's a lot of problem fixing that I do. I also shoot from the hip quite a bit. So I will just tell people how I feel about something. And I think especially my team members are a little bit more cautious and more investigative. So they naturally are better at this than I am.
Right.
So I learn more from them on this than the other way around. I will also ask them to sanity check. Like, I want to send an angry email. Do you think it's fair? Do you, am I wrong here? Because they are a little bit more kinder than I am, or more patient. So I will ask them to sanity check. And then if they agree with something, then somebody gets an angry email.
So it's been checked.
Yes.
If you get an angry email, you should know it's been checked by at least, it's been verified by at least two others.
Everybody agrees with it.
Yeah. Everyone thinks you're wrong. Cool.
Oh, sorry. Can I add one more thing to that? I'm also protective of my team.
Yeah.
So that also, so I also sometimes will, I want people to treat them nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then under stress, people can get a little bit rude sometimes. Everybody's under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that that's behavior that has to be corrected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have to be nice to people in a working environment.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you're under stress is fine, but that's your problem.
Mm-hmm.
You need to deal with it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I do also think that I'm maybe a little bit more impatient with other people because I try to protect the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good leadership, really good leadership quality in terms in shielding them from that. Within
and
that
also
tough environment.
I think it's also a big part of switching from being a lawyer to in-house.
Mm-hmm.
As a lawyer, we're also trained to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
If people ask us to do something, especially when you're starting, you do it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't question whether or not your client is, whether you are the best fit person to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You have a yes mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas when you work in-house, all of a sudden you have 8 hours a day to do your job, and you're responsible for making that 8 hours the most efficient for the company. Mm-hmm. So you have to all of a sudden yourself assess, these are all the things that people have asked from me. Where is my time best spent? Where am I adding the most value? And so you have to be much more careful about not doing other people's job. And given that we are trained with a yes mentality, if you start at an in-house company for the first time, you can get a little bit overwhelmed because you never learned how to say no, or you never learned how to push back to somebody saying, hey, this is your job, it's not my job. I'm going to do something more useful.
Yeah.
So that's also a big part of where I'm protective.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really important. And in the you spoke on different cultures and how that interacts. What's the culture map like at Mollie? Like, is it really international?
Yes, I don't quote me on the numbers, but I think we have like 70 or 80 different nationalities.
Wow.
We only have offices in Europe and the UK, but people from a lot of different nationalities work in all those offices. So it's really international.
Right. Nice. Well, thank you for sharing those and sharing your lessons. Really good to chat. Hope you enjoyed it as well. Got some really good food for thought and great experiences of someone going into that role where they're setting up a function, which a lot of people step into. So thank you.
Okay, it was a lot of fun to do.
Thank you. So that wraps up another episode of Lessons I Learned in Law, powered by Harriet Brown in-house legal recruitment. Now, I share these stories each week to help lawyers of all levels, and both in private practice or working in-house. And it doesn't matter if you're early in your career or you're already leading a team. Learning from your peers or from those who have walked in your shoes before, then this is the show for you. If you find it useful, I would love it if you could share it with your colleagues or share it with your network, or drop us a message just to let us know that you're listening and that you're out there. Feedback really helps us grow the show and take it in the direction that gives the most value to you, our listeners. So until next time, I've been Scott Brown. Thank you.